Very good morning, one and all. First of all, it's an absolute honor and privilege to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thanks to Raja and everybody who is involved. Thanks to Dr. Ishwar for the nice invitation. First of all, I must confess, and I should put a big disclaimer even before I start the talk, that I'm not a trained radiologist, or I don't belong to even the healthcare side of things, although I'm a very curious person to understand better about healthcare. I'm a software engineering researcher and an AI system researcher by profession, right? And of course, an academic. So whatever I'm going to say, take it with a pinch of salt from a radiology perspective, but I'll try to see how much I can ground so that you will be able to relate to what I'm going to say, right? So I think they're still setting up the machine. Is it working? Can you just... Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'll quickly introduce myself in the meantime, right? So, by the way, on one side, I did a master's in software architecture, software engineering. On the other side, I did something in AI and machine learning without understanding why I'm doing both of them. And then at some point, of course, right, many of us do that. And then at some point, I realized, of course, I want to be an academic, and I started doing my PhD. And the PhD was in the intersection of AI and software engineering. And guess what? Today, everybody is talking about that, right? On one side, we are talking about Agentic AI. On the other side, we are talking about AI replacing developers, right? Of course, developers are still there. Cars are still running with drivers, human drivers. But still, there is a lot of possibilities that are opening up, right? So I'm going to talk about Agentic AI, right? How Agentic AI can help. What does it mean when we say Agentic AI, and potentially how it can help radiology, right? So that will be broadly the scope of the talk. Yeah. Great, finally it's working. Awesome. So that's the topic, Agentic AI and its potential for radiology workflows. As I said, Agentic AI is completely my side, but potential for radiology workflows is what I gathered based on my own research, my own understanding of the domain. So pardon me if I'm making any stupid mistakes or any rookie mistakes that you think, okay, come on guys, right? But I'll try to talk more from the system side of things, right? What is Agentic AI? What does it mean when we say Agentic AI? And how it could be used for potentially radiology, right? Awesome. So, there is this nice English literature poem that says, water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. Similarly, it's agents everywhere. I don't want to, there is no place to move, right? Everybody is talking about agents. Am I getting replaced? Will I lose my job? What should I do next? How should I upskill, right? These are the common questions I keep getting, right? And of course, it all started because, at some point, Microsoft decided to do a very interesting experiment. A lot of people were doing this. The idea of, you have language models. Somebody was talking about that, right? That a model can generate text. What if two models can talk to each other, right? It becomes very conversational. Now, can I do something beyond this? Than generating text, can I translate that text into some formidable actions, right? So this resulted in a lot of interesting things. And of course, we have nice articles that are up there, right? For example, Nature had a very interesting, paper that I was researching on, talks about the fact that role of agentic artificial intelligence in healthcare, and they talk a lot about how it can help radiology, right? And there is a very interesting article from AWS Health, where they actually says, intelligent radiology workflow optimization and how agents can help in such an optimization, right? On the other side, there are also articles that are coming up, let's say from Harvard Business Review, that says that Agentic AI is already changing the workforce, right? And of course, people are also saying, hey, take it with a pinch of salt, because companies are laying off people, not really because AI is helping them, but seeing its potential, right? Of course, I see that there are a lot of possibilities, and that's why I'm already up for it, right? Of course, so there is a lot of hype that is going around, right? But the most important thing is, there is also a lot of possibilities. So, a year back, a very interesting article came in IEEE Software, right? So IEEE Software is one of the practitioner-friendly magazines, and two researchers came up with this very interesting observation. They say that, hype is not really harmful, right? Hype becomes harmful when we take important strategic decisions without understanding the foundations and what could be the impact of such things, right? That is when hype really becomes a problem. So if we understand foundations, where something works, where something does not work, what are the boundaries, then it becomes very important or very easy for us to make strategic decisions. So my role today, in the remaining 17 minutes that I have, is to just give you that foundations of what does it mean when we say an agent, what does it mean when we say agentic AI, and how can we translate that to some valuable use cases that you could think of in your profession, right? Awesome. So what is an agent, right? Everybody talks about agentic AI, but let's first understand what is an agent. And of course, if you go to the dictionary definition of it, right? And we know it's not a new terminology for us. Agent just means a person who acts on behalf of you. That's it, right? It's not something new. Of course, AI got attached to it, but let's come to that later, right? And agents are not new person that we are seeing now, right? Of course, there have been agents around us. There are different types of agents around us. We have travel agents, insurance agents, different types of agents. Now, what is the interesting thing about this agent? You'd be like, what is this guy talking about, right? The idea is everybody understands what they are supposed to do. You are going to a travel agent because you know that they'll be able to handle your travel requirements and you don't want to interfere with them. You just tell them, hey, you know what? I want to go from place A to place B and you take care of it. I'm come to a healthcare professional because I'm not a domain expert on that. And I trust that you will take care of me and you will tell me what I should do, right? In some sense, all of us are agents in different domains because we have complete autonomy, or at least we believe we have complete autonomy in what we do, and we try to do the best thing possible so that the other person also is able to get value out of it, right? So that's a simple idea of an agent itself. Now, what does it mean when we say that it's an agentic AI or an AI agent, right? In simple terms, if you look at a human agent, right, let's try to break this down. A human agent, or any agent that we call, is somebody who can take or perceive inputs from multiple modalities, right? And of course, thanks to the other speakers who already introduced this, so I don't have to talk about this, right? So when I say multiple modalities, I could take an image as a human. I can, perceive image. I can perceive what is happening in front of me. I can listen to audio. I can look at text. And based on this, what am I going to do? I have this capability because I have a very interesting brain, right? That can take this input and reason on that input, right? And that is where actually AI comes to the picture, right? As Professor Bapi was mentioning, I can take an image and I can use an AI model that can reason on it. But that AI model is only going to help you reason on it. It cannot perform anything more than that. It can say, hey, this is about this is about that, right? But based on that, you need some capability by which you can perform an action, right? For instance, if I go to a travel agent and say that, hey, I want to go from Hyderabad to Bangalore, they can say, hey, these are the different options that are available, right? And they can also go ahead and book the ticket for you, right? So they are going to reason, understand what is your objective, and they are going to come up with suggestions, but they cannot just give you a suggestion and stop there. That's what AI does, AI model does. But now, after the suggestions are given, I should be able to take that suggestion, actually book the ticket, and send you an email, send you an SMS, right? Allow you to make payments, everything has to be done, right? So what we are essentially saying is that on one side, I have the ability to reason, and that is where AI helps, but whenever I do this, I should also have a capability by which I understand better the user. For instance, imagine that you are doing, an X-ray analysis, right? The same patient comes next time. You will be able to recollect probably, right? Or you will have some way in your database which says that, okay, this person was already there, this was the previous impressions, now maybe I should make an observation also considering that. So there is some notion of memory that need to be there. It's not just about a model, right? A model can always give the same impression again and again, but I should also consider the past history. For that, I need some place where I can store memories, and humans have that capability, right? We have a brain, but we also have a portion of our brain where we can store memories. And of course, after this, we might also use some utilities, right? As humans, we might say, I'm a travel agent, let me note what are your requirements, right? Or let me book a ticket using my laptop, right? That is one aspect. The other aspect is I might also interact with my fellow colleagues. As a radiologist, you might interact with other, people in your field and understand better from them, right? So which means, as an agent, I should be able to perceive input. I should be able to store some, impressions. I should be able to reason on things. I should be able to use some kind of utilities. I should also be able to interact with other agents, right? So that is what agentic AI is all about. It's not just about model, it's about building around the model. That's why we always say agentic AI is really not just about AI, it's about building around the AI. It's actually about the ecosystem, right? So I hope that is clear. So with that notion, what we are going to do is we are going to, I'm going to take you through a small journey, right? By the way, all the examples that I've shown are actually built for this particular use case. So I was just trying to build something, play around with some notebooks, right? So whatever, these are not created, right? These were actually built using Gemini model, yeah? Okay, Gemini is also a sponsor, but yeah. So what I did is, what is the simplest agent that you can think of? The simplest agent is anything that can take an input and give out an action. And what is that action? That action could be just generating text, right? This is your simple text model, right? So imagine that you can build a simple chatbot with this. What could be the chatbot? I can say, hey, give me a checklist with points for radiology reporting quality, right? And of course, I go to a Gemini, I just integrate a simple model, and that model can split out information like, okay, high quality radiology report, blah, 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 and it'll say something. But the most interesting thing is, this can be for any hospital, any organization, any type of radiology, whatever, right? It's not specific to any particular organization, any particular best practices, any particular standards, and so on and so forth. And now if I go and ask this question, hey, give me a checklist for MRI as per NABH, right? It does not know, probably, because the model has all the information in the world, but it cannot be grounded on a very specific information. Now somebody will say, okay, what if I train a model and build it? But that's a very costly process. You don't always need to do that, right? That's when a very interesting thing came, which is called retrieval augmented generation. I'm not going into the details of it, but the idea is I can give some knowledge, and this knowledge could contain all the policy documents, all the information pertaining to your organization, your enterprise, or specific to NABH, whatever, and I can pass it to the model. So whenever I generate an output, I'll say, hey, you know what? You generate the output, but look at the guidelines or look at the documents and then generate on top of it, right? So I want my model to be grounded on the knowledge that I give. Now what happens? I can say, give me a checklist for MRI as per NABH. And guess what I did? Of course, I was just going through Google. I found out some interesting documents from NABH. I took it, I used that as a grounding, and based on that, Gemini was able to generate something. Great. But still, I cannot do something more here, right? For example, if I now go back and ask, what did we just talk about? It will say, I don't know what we talked about, because fundamentally, a model is stateless. We call this stateless, which means I don't remember anything. I just ask something, you'll respond. If I again ask, you'll forget about it, because you don't have any place to store this information, A. The second is, I can, if I ask a question like, can this patient proceed for contrast CT? I don't know what that means, yeah? So the question here is, if I say, can this patient, the model will be like, what does this patient refer to? Who is that patient? I don't know. It'll blabber out something, right? But I want the model to really understand the patient who is, probably take the patient ID, get the details of the patient, understand what is their past, history of medical, whatever diagnosis, and then say if they are ready for contrast CT. Which means I should have some ability to probably talk to your EHR records, get information from your database and do it. And this agent cannot do that. So what will I do? I'll go to the next step and I'll say, okay, let me give you some access to my database. Let me give you an access to a place where I can store all this information so that next time you generate, right? If I say, can this patient now proceed for contrast CT, where I'm trying to understand what this patient is, right? So some place I'm able to get the patient ID, I'm able to go to the database, search for the patient record, and then I can give out the output, right? And it is saying that, okay, there are no immediate, whatever it says, contraindications for a contrast CT. Based on this information, the patient can likely proceed. This is automatically done by the agent, right? Okay, it is just taking all the data and it is doing it. A model alone cannot do this, right? I need more capability. That's a capability I'm adding here. And then if I ask the question, what did we just talk about? It is saying, oh, we just discussed whether the patient ID could proceed for a contrast CT based on their EGFR, contrast allergy, blah, 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 right? Why? Because I'm building that memory capability which the agent is now using when it is generating the next output, right? So this is all fun, right? This is all great because I can integrate with my hospital software or other tools for additional context. But Agentic AI, I'm still talking about a single agent. I'm not talking about Agentic AI, because the moment I say Agentic AI, it's not just about single agent. I want multiple agents to collaborate and come out with information, right? So what does that mean? It means I can go one more step further, right? I can combine what Professor Bapi said, right? And build more additional layers on top of it. What is that? I can just pass a CT scan or an X-ray report, and I can say, hey, you know what? Use an image model, understand what is this about, figure out what this contain, and then verify if this is correct, create a structured report out of it, verify if the report is correct, and then finally present to the, the doctor or the radiologist, and then the radiologist can take a call, right? I'm not a believer that we should say that AI will replace, but I see that AI can augment, right? That's what I would want to say. So what can I do? I can build an AI agentic radiology orchestrator. Now what is that orchestrator going to do? It is going to take an input, and I'm going to say, hey, generate a report for the X-ray for the patient 2341. So what did I do? I took a sample X-ray image from whatever was available in Google, right? And then I just created this bunch of agents. What are these agents? I have a scan analyzer agent that is going to take the X-ray scan and tell me using an image, a vision language model that says that, okay, this is what the X-ray is all about. And then I have a patient agent, which is going to take information from the patient, right? Use the AI to understand better the context of the patient. What are the past information about the patient? What are the past allergies? Whether this patient is, susceptible for something or not, and all that. And then I have a report generator agent that has an AI model that is going to combine this information, right, and generate an interesting report out of it. Yes, so far everything is fine, but who will tell me this is correct, right? So in Agentic AI, we have this concept called generator critique, where one agent can generate something and the other agent can critique it, right? So even before it comes to the human, I can have a loop where I say, okay, generate this, critique this. So in critique agent, you can give some quality criteria to say whether it is abiding by those quality criteria, right? So I do this loop, and finally I get an interesting response. And of course, I have a disclaimer at the end that says that this output is generated by AI-powered workflow. Do not take it for granted. This requires, further check by the radiologist. And this is what is done by ChatGPT also, right? AI-powered, output may contain inaccuracy. So, please take it with a pinch of salt and so on, right? So I can go here. One more level up. Right? You can do one more level up, then this is where it gets little crazy, right? Because here I have an orchestrator, and the orchestrator has complete flow, right? It says that first I should do analysis, then I should do a patient information, augment it with patient information, and then do it step by step, right? So everything is well orchestrated like a conductor in an orchestra, right? But I can go one more step further, where I can say there is no orchestrator, right? It's like I put a room of radiologists in one place, and I say this is the patient case, you figure out, what do you think about this case, right? The same thing you can build a capability into AI as well, where I'll say, okay, there is no central orchestrator. This is like a common place where I'll keep sharing the information. I can have this bunch of agents that talk and come out with a conclusion, right? There, everybody is going to come out with their own, information, their own domain expertise, and finally you're going to say, okay, whether this patient is good for something or not, right? So this is actually called true multi-agent, and this is years away. It's not very easy to build this. There are a lot of challenges to build this. Right? Most of the enterprises today in the software side are going with the orchestrated side, right? Just to give you a quick TLDR. So how do you go about building this? There are a lot of agentic AI frameworks that are out there, right? That allows you to build agentic systems, right? So you don't have to build anything from scratch. Luckily, we have people who have built it, right? For instance, you have things like LandGraph, Crew AI. There are multiple technologies that are available, right? And we did a study to understand, because I keep getting this question wherever I give a talk. They'll say, hey Karthik, which is the best agentic AI framework can I use? And we have this notion in software system design that there is nothing called best. There is always something that works depending on the context, right? We cannot generalize anything, and I think this is common in many fields. So we came up with this conclusion after analyzing all the agentic frameworks that most of them are immature, right? Not really ready for production use, which is for actual enterprise use case, except for few like Google ADK, Microsoft semantic kernels, and so on and so forth, right? So that's the observation we came up with. But interestingly, parallel to all this, we have also built our own agentic framework, right? So we were working with a startup called Monty Cloud. It's in a completely different domain. I'm not even going into the domain. It's on the domain of cloud computing, right? So we built something for autonomous cloud operations, which is managing your entire cloud. There also we have to look through your cloud. We have to do an analysis of your cloud footprint, how much cost you have, do you have some security issues, create a report out of it, tell to the customer that here are the issues, right? And based on that, we have to take actions. So we built a complete agentic loop for it, right? And we built our own in-house framework. We published a paper out of it. It came out to be a nice paper. But more than that, we wanted to open source it, right? So we also created an open source version of it. And this open source is available in this repository. And last year's, this was also spotlighted as one of top India's AI research by NASSCOM in the 2025 edition of their compendium that they released, right? So the idea is, if you really want to understand something from scratch, probably this could be something that we could use. And we are continuously using this to teach people concepts of agentic AI. How do you go about building agentic system? And one quick gap that I analyzed when I was researching a bit on radiology and AI can be used in radiology is that for healthcare specific agentic systems, we don't have clear frameworks, because the amount of assurance, the amount of reliability that is needed, we don't have that, right? So that is a very good area where you could explore, right? A lot of things could be done there. So one of the questions that people ask is, okay, Karthik, you build the agentic system, and by the way, that agentic system is out there in production. We have thousands of customers who are using it. We are continuously getting feedbacks. All great. But the biggest challenge we had is, how do you test and evaluate this agentic system, right? That is very, very big problem to be solved. So we said, okay, we cannot wait for others to solve this problem. We will have to solve this problem because we are anyway there, right? So we created a framework where we said, if you want to really evaluate an agentic system, you have to look from multiple pillars, right? Again, as I said, the multiple components, the tools, the model itself, the memory, and the environment in which the agent is deployed, right? One of the biggest challenges, all the systems requires enormous amount of computing resources, right? So we have to evaluate the systems from multiple angles. You cannot just say that my model is bad, because of that my system is bad. There is a famous line that goes from a statistician which says that all models are wrong, some are useful. Right? So you cannot expect a model to be 100%, but you can build a system in such a way that you can build around the model. You cannot expect a model to be 100%, right? If you have questions on that, we can discuss about it later. But what I want to just quickly glimpse out is we have been doing a lot of research over the last 2.5 years in this space of AI and software engineering. Also using AI for improving software code generation and all that side. And the other side, how do you build agentic systems itself, right? So all these papers are outside, open source. You can go to the link and you can see what works we have been doing in this field, right? And of course, all the, if you have not been listening to whatever I've been saying, and we have this quick 1 minute and you're like, okay, Karthik, shut up. Just tell me what are the quick takeaways that you have for us, right? So I just have a few points for you, right? And the points are this. Definitely, Agentic AI is shifting the way we think about building software or software services. And the fact that Satya said SaaS is dead is not because SaaS is really dead, but the way we do SaaS, the way we build software is completely changing, right? And definitely we need a change in mindset. We cannot keep saying that AI is not going to be there or whatever. We have to start embracing it and start seeing how much we can leverage it. I think that's what is very important. And it's not about replacement, it is more about augmenting. And one more thing I want to say is, as Professor Bapi was mentioning, I'm sure later Dr. Parmeshri would also say, which is, you need domain-specific language models, small language model which are very specific to the domain, which can understand better the domain, understand better Indian context. That's when you can actually make this agentic system very powerful. And with all that, I just want to say one more thing, which is please be mindful of the environmental impact these systems are creating, because that is something nobody talks about. We don't have enough power. We have to be really mindful about that as well, right? Because that's something we vouch for, because our group is about software architecture for sustainability. Thanks to all these wonderful students. Credits to them. Mistakes are mine, because all the whatever I presented is based on the work done by so many amazing students. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.